ICE captured a wanted El Salvadoran fugitive, Christian Alberto Rivas Escalante, hiding in the U.S. on August 7th. The individual had a criminal warrant in El Salvador for serious charges. The arrest followed a multi-agency effort, including local law enforcement and Homeland Security. The fugitive entered the U.S. illegally, evading detection for months, accused of violent crimes and gang affiliations back in El Salvador. Earlier, ICE warned that foreign fugitives pose serious risks to American communities. The suspect is being held in federal custody, awaiting legal processing and extradition. The development comes as U.S. President Donald Trump has vowed to launch the largest mass deportation operation in American history.
But up first, this evening dramatic video shows what neighbors say was an immigration enforcement raid in East Houston.
Families say their loved ones were simply heading to work when agents moved in.
And it happened near the Gulf Freeway at South Wayside. Aniela Ruiz is live with what she is learning about those allegedly detained. Aniela, fill us in.
Well, neighbors and families say that they happened as they were leaving this apartment complex. You can see this is a road that runs right behind this. The people that were picked up, they're roofers, they were construction workers, they were cooks at local restaurants, and many of these families tell us they know they're undocumented, but never believed that they would be targeted on their way to work. With fear and uncertainty, Teresa sits quietly outside her apartment. Her 8-year-old son by her side. She says her husband Eric was a cook. He was picked up by ICE agents right outside their apartment complex early this morning. She said ICE had been at the complex before dawn, but neighbors believe agents had left when Eric went to work. Moments later, she learned Eric had been taken. A neighbor shared this cell phone video showing agents pinning him to the ground. Eric's brother says he's in shock this happened to them. He has no criminal background. They had simply come from Guatemala looking for a better life. Surveillance video from a gas station next door shows another angle of the raid. You can see the men were walking towards work, then suddenly running back as armed men in vests chased after them. Another woman told us her husband was also arrested. She tells us she's sad. She has 4 children. Her husband is the sole provider. It's hard for her. Now she worries how her family will go on. Now, we did reach out to ICE, but I've not heard back yet with a comment or even a confirmation. But we do know that under the Trump administration, all of these immigration enforcement activities have really increased regardless of their criminal record. And again, we'll continue to follow up on this and bring you guys the latest. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
So if you got a court order to go before a judge and you don't show up, what happens? And they thought it was fine. They're not doing any crime. They did the crime when they came over here illegally. You know, that's the crime. So I don't feel sorry for them. They knew what they were getting into. But you got to remember, if you're doing the crime, you're going to jail. Right? And you're not going to get out just like they are. They get picked up, thrown out. They've been doing that through the Biden administration. And, you know, yeah, my heart goes out for the children and stuff. But the thing is, the parents put their children in that position. Just like if the parents left their kids in a hot car and went into the store and left them out there baking. It's the parents' faults. And they should pay for that.
I'm Allie Bradley with News Nation, and we're here early in the morning. We're getting ready to go right along with ICE. They're conducting a targeted enforcement operation here in El Paso, something that we have not yet witnessed. So we're going to go see what we can find today.
Good morning, guys. All right, this guy, the target we're going after today is actually here legally as a lawful permanent resident. Okay, in 2021, he got arrested. That's when we first encountered him. He got arrested at the county jail for 5 different counts. First one was sexual abuse of a child, continuous, victim under 14. 2 counts of indecency with a child, sexual contact, and 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault with a child. Well, he just got convicted in in May of 2025 for one count of sexual abuse of a child continuous under 14, and the second one was aggravated sexual assault of a child. So for this subject right here, we're going to try and apprehend him today and put him in front of the immigration judge so they can hear his case.
Okay, so we just sat in on a briefing with ICE, ERO, HSI, DEA, the FBI, and U.S. Marshals, all here in El Paso for a targeted enforcement operation. They have an individual who has been convicted of child sex abuse. So that is the individual that they're going after. He is here illegally according to ICE. So that is the target today. Right now, they know where he is. They know what vehicles he's driving. So they're hoping to be able to make this apprehension.
So you guys believe we can... So you guys believe we can... You know what? He's using a cane. Looks like he can barely walk. You think we should block him in right there, Lozano, as he's trying to pull out? Yeah, we should just go ahead and set those. Yeah, copy that. Choma, you want to pull up slowly? He's having a hard time walking, man. We're gonna...
All right, so what we're doing right now is we're essentially on a stakeout. We are at the mercy of this target right now because they have an administrative warrant. They're not actually able to go inside of the home, so they have to wait for this individual to come out. That is very typical of a lot of these individuals that have criminal history, that have an order of removal, that are part of these targeted enforcement operations. So that's why it's so difficult. They can't just walk up and grab an individual or, you know, go into this person's house and say, we know he's in there. They have to wait. They're, like I said, at the mercy of this individual. So right now, that's what we're doing, and that is why it's so difficult. And they have several individuals as part of a team waiting on this one guy. So that's a lot of resources, a lot of time and manpower, and it took them about a week to get this case together. And they have multiple targets every single day. Sometimes they'll get their guy, sometimes they don't. So that is just kind of the nature of the beast out here.
You guys can call out when he's actually in the vehicle hanging out. He just got into the vehicle. Hey, somebody, we got a lady with a dog passing by right here. Does it look like they're already secured in the vehicle? Good? Yeah, his feet went up, like inside. It's moving. It's moving. We're just putting a block in right there, man. He's not very mobile.
Just wait for him to try to... Right here.
Okay.
No.
You live here, man? What's your relationship, son? What's your name? Betsy. No. Okay. Do me a favor. Come this way. You can't. Do you have a cane or something? Here. Listen, ma'am.
No comment. Okay, so this individual was just arrested without incident. As you could see, they kind of circled in as soon as he left the house. Were able to identify that suspect positively. He did have a passenger in the vehicle that he was referring to as his love, so assuming his romantic partner there. She is being talked to by the federal officials right now. They're taking him now for that processing we're talking about, where they want to put him in front of an immigration judge so that he can be removed. I did ask him if he had any comments towards the families of these children that he's been convicted of assaulting. He did not have a comment for us. So now they will take him and process him further, and he's in the custody of the federal agents now. You're smart. That's really smart. Yeah. Can you give us a little debrief on that right there? You have your face covered and everything. Is that okay? So obviously, quick. Everything moved really, really quickly. As soon as they started moving and they were on the road, tell me kind of the strategic move there about you guys coming in.
Yeah, so we had already been watching this house, right? So we already knew where we had to park in order to get a view of that door. As you could tell, that Mercedes is parked right next to the main door, right? So we're concerned that he would see us and run straight into the house. We weren't aware that he was going to have a cane with him, right? But once we saw him pull out, I was telling the guys to make sure that we overwhelm him so he doesn't have the option to run into the house. Or what you see a lot is they'll start thinking, oh, there's only 2 cars, I could probably get away. But if you overwhelm them with a lot of vehicles, they don't think that way anymore. So we take that element out.
And there was no incident, but it did look like he was kind of trying to be mobile in his car at first before, we really closed in. And then he didn't want to open the door at first, and you had kind of said it almost looked like he was going to put up a fight. When it doesn't happen, talk about the success there, because again, this was without incident. No officers were hurt. Nobody was impacted at all, and he's fine, and so is the passenger. Talk about the success there, if that is a success for you.
Yeah, so this is actually what we hope would happen, right? Because once they start moving their vehicle, trying to use it as a weapon against us, then it's a big safety concern for us as supervisors, right? But we've been doing this for a little while. Most of the guys out here, as you can tell, we have DEA, marshals, FBI, HSI, ERO. So we've been doing this for a little while, especially working together. So we know what can happen. And so that's the reason we already knew. We just need to overwhelm him to not give him that option to think, to make sure we make this a successful apprehension, right? And luckily, he didn't have a chance to go into the house. A lot of vehicles, as you could tell when we pulled up, I felt like he was thinking a little bit, but then he saw 3 more vehicles pull up to the front, and so he gave up at that point. But clearly he didn't want to roll down his window. But at that point, we have the authority to extract him from the vehicle because we have the warrant in our hand and we know who he is. And so I'm glad it played out the way it played out.
Yeah, and when I was asking him about his convictions, right, he didn't deny anything, but he also didn't want to talk about it. So I'm sure you guys probably can put the feather in the cap. You got one of the bad guys off the streets. Now he's going to go in front of an immigration judge, and it'll be in their hands to determine what happens with him.
Yes, he's just exactly what the kind of persons we're going after, right? We want to get the worst of the worst, and we want to help keep our community safe, right? So I'm glad it went the way it went today.
Multiple convictions against children. Wow. Thank you. Okay, so obviously we just apprehended a convicted criminal. What happens with him next? Yeah, I know you had said you want to get him in front of an immigration judge. How do we get there?
Yeah, so as soon as we get to the office right now, we're actually going to process him, right? So that we can schedule his immigration hearing with the judge. And because of his conviction, it's highly likely that he is going to get a deportation order by the immigration judge back to Mexico. And I think that's the reason why his wife was crying that way, right? Because she knows he's pretty much gone at this point now that he's in our custody. So that's pretty much what happens with these permanent residents that come in. Serious crimes as such, right?
ICE agents turning box trucks into modern-day Trojan horses during a raid yesterday in downtown Los Angeles. Agents burst out of the back of the trucks, sending immigrants scrambling across the Home Depot parking lot. Homeland Security says they staged the raid there because MS-13 has that neighborhood in a chokehold. But Mayor Karen Bass seems to think federal agents had more nefarious motives.
So these agents were claiming that they were targeting gang members, MS-13 gang members.
Yeah, and you can see that when somebody is sitting in a Home Depot. They label us in. You can tell that they're gang members. You know? Where are the names? Where is the evidence? Where's the warrant? You know, to me, that's the essence of racial profiling. I see somebody that looks like they might be a gang member.
So you're saying basically, Mayor, that they just saw Brown and targeted that?
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying.
Well, that neighborhood was the site of another raid last month. While agents were working then, Mayor Bass actually showed up, confronted the federal agents, and told them to go home. But Border Czar Tom Homan is sending this warning to sanctuary cities that he says are protecting illegal immigrants over U.S. citizens.
Well, we're putting them on notice, and we've already filed lawsuits against several sanctuary cities, and we're going to continue doing that, holding them responsible, because they are one of the main reasons we see the attacks on American citizens. You know, look at the cases of young ladies that were raped and murdered by members of the TDA. Look at the cases where many of these people were apprehended once before and released from a sanctuary city.
And that's another layer, Lisa. If they're intent on protecting Brown, well, then they should be protecting those victims of many of these criminal illegal immigrants that are disproportionately from communities like that, too. So where's that outrage?
Well, exactly, Emily. It's their upside-down world that these leftists live in. I would like to say let's just let these sanctuary cities deal with bear their own consequences and bear their own weight of their sanctuary city problems. But unfortunately, it spills out to the rest of us. And we saw that with Lake and Riley, where her killer enters into the country, El Paso, Texas, settles in New York City, where he had charges related to endangering a child in a motor vehicle violation, was released before ICE could issue a detainer, and then was sent to Athens, Georgia on a humanitarian flight, right? So that's the problem with all this, is we have to stop it at its source, because it's eventually going to impact the rest of us. Also, especially after what we saw under Joe Biden, we should be doing everything we can to put up a red sign. You're not welcome in the United States. And sanctuary cities are basically a green light saying, come to America, come to the United States, and come here. And it needs to be stopped.
If you've spent so much time on ride-alongs and at the border and the like, talk to us about the danger that the mayor poses when she totally impedes the course of duties of law enforcement while they are in the course of what is statistically a really dangerous execution of their official duties.
That's the perfect question, Emily. So what the mayor here is protecting, Mayor Bass, is on that Home Depot raid that we were just watching, that Matt Finn, our correspondent, went on. Among the people they arrested was a Guatemalan national that had been convicted 3 times. Not once, not twice, 3 times of a DUI. Now, that poses a threat to the community. But for a sanctuary city, that individual would have been not released back out to the streets and would have been sent out. But Mayor Bass isn't alone. You see here in New York City, a sanctuary city. You see in New Jersey, you just had an individual, an illegal alien, criminal alien with a rap sheet cross the lane, hit a mother, an 11-year-old child. That individual had multiple cases that they were released back on the streets, when in both situations they should have just been removed from the country. They would have gotten lawful federal immigration orders to be removed, and that's why Border Czar Tom Homan, talking to Harris, is saying just work with us to take the threat off the streets. How people are not on board with this as a bipartisan issue is beyond me.
Well, we've seen this so much with mayors of Democrat-run cities downplaying the role that criminal cartels play in control of their city operations. You had it in Denver when Tren de Aragua was controlling multiple apartment complexes. You had the media and other Democrats being like, that's absurd, they're not doing it, before finally admitting that they were. Cartels control our southern border. They control completely who gets in and who gets out. And part of the way they control that is by having these outposts in American cities. So this downplaying of the role that cartels play and the damage they cause, the human trafficking, the sex trafficking, the drugs that they're running, it makes it very hard to think that Karen Bass will in any way be anything other than a problem when she doesn't even acknowledge that reality.
Well, and our reality under the current President Trump is so different than what it has been that let all these people into the country. So our National Guard and our military are controlling that border now. And when you go down there, you can see that. The cartels are being pushed back. There are reports of them bleeding money, if you will. They're in financial trouble. As a cartel, I don't exactly know how that happens, but too bad for them. What that means, though, is that we have millions of these people here, and we didn't vet any of them, so we've got to find them. And as Molly is pointing out, when they're living amongst us, they exploit our weaknesses. And part of Karen Bass's weakness in some of these blue state-led areas and their leaderships is well, gosh, we don't really know who's here either. They'll pop up when they pop up. We don't want to look bad, so, let's just try and push that under the rug. If that's not what's happening, I'd like for her and some of these other leaders to come out and defend their actions then. And by the way, are we ever going to be any more confused that Karen Bass doesn't care about her constituents than we were when the LA fires broke out? And on the heels of that, within hours, she had jetted off to another country? Like, I think we're clear. She doesn't have this in her. She's not focused on it. It's not in her front view.
Hey, everyone.
Now there comes this guy, Tennessee Brando. He's a deep stater. He brags about MSD or whatever, the media. He's locked into them, and they always spin the agenda. And you're going to see his brainwashing of what they're doing, compared to what I just showed you. The mainstream media are all saying this terrible stuff, and they're doing these terrible things, when in reality they're doing exactly what they told you were going to do. So let's take a look at this guy.
So anytime Trump's board czar Tom Homan sits down for an interview, you know that he's going to say something completely over the top and take Trump's extremism to a whole new level. I've said many times here on the channel that once Trump is gone, there's going to be people that's going to take his act and they're going to take it even farther. But the truth is, they're doing that already. And anytime Tom Homan sits down, he's already doing that. He's always taking the most hateful, the most racist rhetoric that he can and amplifying it. And that's what he does in this next clip. When he makes the claim that ICE agents can detain people based on their physical appearance. That's not the truth, but it doesn't stop him from saying it on TV. Take a look.
Reaction to this Biden-appointed federal judge out in Los Angeles, apparently expected today to issue a temporary restraining order halting your lawful operations. She says, I think it's important for the court not to burden otherwise lawful law enforcement activities. Your reaction there?
Look, if people need to understand, ICE officers and Border Patrol, they don't need probable cause to walk up to somebody, briefly detain them, and question them. They just need the totality of the circumstances, right? They just got through the observation, get articulable facts based on the location, the occupation, their physical appearance, their actions. Like a uniformed border police walks up to them at for instance, a Home Depot. And they got all these articulable facts, plus the person walks away or runs away. Agents are trained. What they need to detain somebody temporarily and question them. It's not probable cause, it's reasonable suspicion. We're trained on that. Every agent, every 6 months, get Fourth Amendment training over and over again. These officers are really good at what they do. And if the judge make a decision that's against what these officers are trained, what the law is based upon, then they're going to shut down operation. I think that's your end game. They want ICE to stop doing this. But if they base it on the rule of law, they're going to find out Border Patrol and ICE is doing exactly what they're going to do in accordance with law.
And you're not going to stop coming. Tom Homan, thank you for getting up with us this morning.
So first of all, that is not true. ICE can't detain people based on their physical appearance. They have to have reasonable suspicion, which he does talk about later on in that interview, but they cannot just detain someone based on physical appearance. But that didn't stop him from putting it out into the world, and Trump supporters will sit back and not have a problem with that. The rest of us will see the blatant racism and the blatant profiling in that, but MAGA will be okay with it. And it reminds me of a story I heard years ago about Lee Atwater. Lee Atwater was a political advisor for George H.W. Bush. And one time he goes on TV and he says a bunch of stuff that's just flat not true. There was a young intern who was there with him, and when Atwater walked off the stage, the young intern said, Mr. Atwater, everything you just said is not true. There's no truth to that. And Atwater said, it is true now because I said it on TV. And that's how I really feel when I see these people go out there and say things. They know that the people watching Fox News will just hear that and say, yeah, that's the way it is. They can do that. That's okay. And they won't have a problem with it. And they don't have a problem when people get sent out of this country with no due process. And when people like us sounds the alarm, we get told that we're being hyperbolic and, oh, I don't think they're really doing that. Well, folks, they're really doing that. We're seeing ICE agents going out here with masks on, breaking people's windows, dragging them out of their vehicles, dragging them out of their homes, sending them out of this country with no due process, and nobody seems to care in MAGA land because the people they're dragging out of here don't look and sound like them. Something has to happen to MAGA. They have to feel the effects of something before they ever care. And that's what's so frustrating dealing with these people day in and day out. And that's why that I'm really not impressed with the ones out there that are upset over the MAGA, the MAGAs that are upset over the Epstein client list, and they're saying that they got duped and played. Well, when are they going to admit that this is wrong? When are they going to step up and say, you know what, profiling someone based on their physical appearance, based on the color of their skin, and sending them out of this country with no due process is wrong? You know, you do have the Joe Rogans of the world who's finally starting to see the light, which I don't even really want to give him credit for that either, because he's a guy who went from voting for Bernie Sanders and supporting him to supporting Donald Trump after everything that happened on January 6th. But at least Rogan is saying this is insane, this is crazy, like he does in this clip here. Take a look.
What you think of the new administration? Certainly there are things that I like about and some of their pro-tech posture and things like that. But what's happening now is it's kind of disappointing.
It's insane.
Yeah.
We were told there would be no. Well, there's two things that are insane. One is the targeting of migrant workers, not cartel members, not gang members, not drug dealers, just construction workers showing up in construction sites, raiding them, gardeners.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Or Palestinian students on college campuses. Or not, like there's a did you see this video of this Turkish students at Tufts University that wrote an essay, and then there's a video of like ICE agents like
Is that the woman?
Yeah.
What was her essay about? It was just critical of Israel, right?
Just critical of Israel. Yeah, I mean,
and that's enough to get you kicked out of the country.
I mean, there's a long history of anti-colonial activism in U.S. colleges, that led to South Africa changing and all of that, and I think this is a continuation of that. I mean, I don't agree with all their there's a lot of radicalism. A lot of young people are attracted to more radical positions on Israel Palestine.
Which I don't mind those positions as long as someone's able to counter those positions.
Right.
The problem is these supposed free speech warriors want to silence anybody who has a more conservative opinion.
Yes.
That's not the way to handle it. The way to handle it is to have a better argument.
That's not American.
It's not American.
I mean, what attracted him to this country, from the moment that was aware and we started consuming American media and American culture, is freedom, is the concept of freedom, which I think is sweet.
Again, I'm glad that Joe Rogan is saying these things out loud. He does have a massive platform, and maybe he can reach people, and maybe there will be people who will do a turnaround and go, hey, we got duped, we got played. But he's also one of the main ones that paved the way for Trump, and that's why it's hard for me to give him a pass, especially after all we lived through with Trump. And folks, there's nothing about what Tom Homan said there that was right. This is flat out wrong, and we should all want everyone to have due process, and we shouldn't want people being dragged out of their homes, being dragged out of their cars based on their physical appearance. And folks, if they would do that to people and send them out of this country with no due process, do you really think they care about you? Do you really think they care about you and your family and how you pay your bills? Why would you think that they would care about you and they would work on the issues at hand that affect you every day if they would treat someone this way right here in our country? This is the absolute worst of who we are, that are now in positions like this and are putting this type of attitude out into the world. And when they go on mainstream media and they sit down in front of mainstream media, they end up normalizing this stuff. And people think this is just another political opinion. It's not. It's a dangerous ideology, and it goes against everything this country was supposed to be. So we have to keep calling it out. We have to keep standing up for people. And
okay, so this guy flat out said that they're profiling. He's taking one thing and he's emphasizing on it. He must have named 7 or 8 different things they look for. And number one thing I look for is if they take off running. If you take off running, you've done something wrong, and you did something wrong. And as far as being over here illegally, that's a crime. That is a crime. They went before a judge, and they're supposed to return for their court hearing. you know what happens if you get arrested? You got to show up in court or you get a warrant for your arrest. It's the law. So this guy's just got an agenda, and he's for the deep state, and he's painting this whole picture. The clip early on also shows ICE agents how they say they have to wait till they come outside the house and they get him. So I don't know about this breaking windows and all that stuff, because they just showed you where they actually wait till they come out of the house, and then they get in their car and they start to leave, and that's when they come on them, because once they go in the house, they can't do nothing. Now, I don't know if that means they got to get a warrant or if they just can't do something. I don't know. But I think I showed right now is the difference between what's going on and what's being spilled by the deep state, which this guy is fully embedded. I don't like his ring that he wears on his right middle finger. He's had that on his hand for over a year. It's not good. All right, buddy. We'll see you. Subscribe. Take a like. Yep.